Spring football is back, and you know what that means. Much recruiting news to come for the University of Miami football program. We'll talk all about it next on the Storm Tracker podcast.
You are now tuned in to the Storm Tracker podcast.
Welcome back, family, to the Storm Tracker podcast. Marcus Benjamin here representing for CanesCounty.com, part of the Rivals.com network. Make sure you subscribe to the website for free. Use the promo code Miami30 and also subscribe to this YouTube channel live from Canes County. Spring football is officially back. We had our first practice on Monday, and there will be several spring practices throughout the month, which means a lot of recruits will be visiting Coral Gables to see if is their college destination. To talk about it all, I've got Brian Smith, who is a national recruiting analyst for the Locked On Canes network. Thanks for joining me today, Brian.
Hey, what's going on, man? Yeah, it's fun to get involved with all the recruiting in Florida. Locked On Network does a great job. And I know Dono well, obviously, so this is just part of it. South Florida didn't disappoint, by the way, with our Under Armour this past weekend, did it?
Yeah, not at all. I mean, it's always a great event every year where we get to see a lot of some of the local talent in the area as well as some national talent as well. We'll talk about that, and we'll talk about some of the recruiting targets that Miami is looking to add to their 2026 class and maybe some 2027 recruits as well. Last night, Miami decided to add another player to its class with Ben Congdon, a talented offensive lineman from the Midwest. Go to CanesCounty.com for an update on that. There'll be some more content regarding Congdon later this afternoon, so look out for that on CanesCounty.com. Brian, your thoughts just generally. I know this is a guy from the Midwest, so maybe not a guy that you're too familiar with. But what do you think of the move from last night to add Congdon to their 26 class?
Well, they want to be big and they want to run downhill. Mirabal and, well, basically the entire offensive staff, and of course the head man himself, they want to play power football. You look at his photo and you go, okay, this fits a Midwestern offensive lineman to a T.
For sure.
And in the heyday for Miami in the late 80s, early 90s, they always had a few guys from there. Bernie Kosar's from Ohio, Chudzinski, different guys. So that's not really shocking. They got the tight end last year from Ohio. Sure. They always dip in and get one or two kids, Chicago, Cleveland, whatever it may be. So I'm not surprised. Now my question is, where exactly does he fit in the pecking order? Is it right tackle? Do they move to guard? I don't know, but he's a power player.
Yeah, he's a player that has a similar build to Markel Bell, who I project to be their starting left tackle this season. Bell played a lot last season when Jalen Rivers was out with an injury, and Congdon definitely fits the prototype, like you said. I mean, they like these big, tall, long offensive linemen that can move, and Congdon is definitely one of those guys. So I'm excited to see what Alex Mirabal and Cristobal will do with him and develop in his development in the next upcoming year. So I'm excited to see that. He wasn't the only recruit that did visit yesterday. The 5-star Tristan Keys did visit yesterday. I had a chance to talk to him as well. So look out for that story later on today on Keys. This is a guy from, the South area where Miami has kind of tapped in as of late. We talked about Inez Cooper off air, who's from that general area. Galen Upshaw is another one from that area as well. So you're over there in Auburn, Brian. So I know you're kind of familiar with the area and the talent in that area. What's your take on Tristan Keys, and does Miami have a shot?
He's a top 3 receiver nationally. He's from the state of Mississippi. He's a kid that we knew about early. I don't believe there's going to be an easy answer for where he's going to go, but he did have a good visit because he locked in an OV, if I remember right.
He did.
Look, there are certain signs that it went well. That would be one of them. He's 6'3", 180 pounds, and just an elite player at the catch point. Bottom line, if you're not open, that doesn't mean you can't make a reception. And he's that guy. And he's got more speed than people probably realize. And with his body, Marcus, I think he's a kid that'll weigh 205 in a few years. He's not filled out yet. And a lot of ways, he's similar to a lot of South Florida kids. A certain
Yeah.
one we're probably going to talk about here in a minute, as well as another receiver. But he's a kid that just makes elite plays. Great kid. He went to that Polynesian Bowl, flew 13
Mhm.
hours, and went to the Battle Miami tournament the next day. Like, he's not normal. Like, most kids don't compete like him.
Yeah.
Tennessee, LSU, Ole Miss, everybody's involved. Miami, I don't know where he's going to go, but that's going to be a battle royale.
Yeah, it certainly is going to be a battle with those SEC schools. From what I understand, LSU and Tennessee will be getting some visits from him as well. But from my take from him is that he really kind of enjoyed the visit thoroughly, and he talked about the number one offense that Miami had last season. So I think that is a really big factor. He seemed to really kind of connect with the staff overall, as far as like the offensive coordinator, as well as the wide receivers coach Kevin Beard. Watching some highlights of him right now, he is definitely a talented kid, and he seems like a very smart kid as well, from what I gathered. So, right now, Rivals has him as the second rated receiver in the entire country, and he definitely looks the part physically. I think Miami definitely has a shot here, being that, like I said, they've had some success in that area. I've named a couple. They've also got Bobby Pruitt, who's generally from that area, the outstanding linebacker who I expect to play a lot this season for the Miami Hurricanes, Cole McConaughey, another edge player that Miami got from that general area. So I think Miami has tapped into that area. They had some misses, of course, over the years in that area as well, but I think Miami's in a good spot. They have locked in an official visit with Keys, so that's going to be an interesting story to watch, kind of going forward. As you can see, he's just has that breakaway speed to take the distance, and he's a tremendous route runner as well. So he would be a great addition. I think he'd probably start right now if he was on the Miami roster. So yeah, he's just that good. So interesting. It will be interesting to see where he ends up. Another player I think that Miami has a great chance with is Jalen Waters. And I do want to mention, about Brian. Brian has some insight with the Florida State Seminoles. This is a guy who was originally committed to the Noles, then flipped to Florida, and all signs are indicating that he decommitted from Florida, and now is highly considering the Canes. He visited for game day visit last fall, also visited in January. I got to talk to him then. What do you think are Miami's chances to land Waters to the class?
From everything I've been told, that's all but a done deal. So it's just a matter of when. I don't really know what the holdup is. I thought it would have been already completed, but this is recruiting. So we'll see how that goes. Maybe it's an NIL. Maybe he wants to take another trip to be sure. There could be many different reasons, but long and athletic corner plays against good competition in the greater Tampa area. And he is not a stranger to the 7-on-7 circuit either. So I liked him at Battle Miami. And that's a kid that I think can pretty much pick his school. Can't teach the length, Marcus. You know the deal at DB, and as Canes fans know, if you don't do well at DB, the defense tends to struggle. Last year is a great example of that. They probably could have used Waters a little bit last season in some ways, but I know that's a little hyperbole to talk about a high school kid, but he just can take away players sometimes with his length. Miami hasn't had a pure takeaway corner since when? When was the last guy they had that you're like, man, that's a first round pick. We know it's coming. He's only a sophomore. We know he's going to be a first round. When was the last time they had that guy? Which is wild.
Yeah,
When I was younger, they always had a top 3 round pick. It seemed like every year it's secondary.
yeah,
That's what they're missing right now. So Jalen Waters is one of, if not the most important defensive recruit on the board, because I think he can play early. Um, you got Frederic that came out and did really well last. He started a whole bunch of games. I don't know if he started every one, but it was a bunch. They
Yeah.
need somebody else coming along now. Yeah, maybe it'll be Waters.
Yeah, Armwood to the U seems like a thing. They already added Gerard Pringle to the roster, who I got to see at practice yesterday, and Kellen Wiley as well is impressing as well. So maybe they add another Armwood player to the roster. I think Miami's in a great spot. I do think Waters probably waits until after his official visits, which are all set. I believe LSU, Florida are still in the mix for official visits, as well as Miami is already locked down. So I think he might wait until after his official visits. But we'll see. You never know. These kids' minds do change a lot here in recruiting, and that's what's fun about it, right, Brian?
To say that they don't change their minds would be the biggest lie ever. It seems like every day we got a different decommitment or a rumor that we're getting from a text. 100%. But it keeps us on our toes. That is a fact.
Yeah, absolutely. Another one of those players that impressed on Sunday for the UA camp was Derek Cooper, and this guy,
Oh, yeah.
5-star athlete. Right now, Rivals has him listed as an all-purpose back. He did compete at running back for at the camp. Also plays safety as well at a very high level. I feel like he got taller from the last time I saw him, which was at the state championship, which of course Chaminade Madonna won, pretty handedly. Cooper's got a lot of suitors. Florida State is in the mix, Georgia, Ohio State as well, all the big boys. But Miami, of course, is the top program that's closest to him being a local guy. When it's all said and done with Derek Cooper, where do you think he ends up?
Georgia. Yeah,
Yeah,
I think it'll be Georgia. For everything I heard, I was checking in on that with some people around. I know he's not going to say much at this point. He's pretty savvy, but Georgia's the team to beat. We'll see how their season goes, but that's the team he kind of followed the last few years. And Kirby does a great job of recruiting. Miami is in on some other guys at different spots, but the one that, if it's not Cooper, they're probably going to get to Javion Mallory, which is a really good player too. My question is, do they want Cooper bad enough to take him and make it a two-back class? I think I would do it because Cooper can play whatever. He's a real good receiver too. Like I was surprised at how good he runs routes. Battle Miami and UA Miami, he was really really good. And
yeah.
by the way Cooper is built right now and the way he does it, like his 40-yard dash, I was standing there when he did that. Everything he does tells me he is a future pro. I'll be curious to see if Miami sweetens the pot with NIL or something to try to get over the top. But right now, I'm here in Georgia.
That's unfortunate to for Hurricanes fans to hear, but recruiting is a fluid situation. It's never something that is very solid or concrete. Even after a player signs these days,
Uh,
you're not even sure if that player will go to said school even after he signs. So, but yeah, that's why we do what we do here. But yeah, Derek Cooper, I think, is by far one of the best players, overall athletes, I think, in the nation, not just locally. So that is a very interesting situation to monitor and watch. I know Miami's going to continue to push here, but we'll see if they come out on top for the 5-star athlete from Chaminade Madonna. Another player from Chaminade Madonna that impressed me on Sunday at the UA camp was Jason Lopez. I mean, this kid
yes.
is really athletic, just a really great kid to just talk to. Two sport athlete, plays basketball, dunks the basketball with ease, and is just one of the best players. Like I said, that I saw at the wide receiver position at the UA camp. Miami seemingly seems to be the front runner for Jason Lopez, who is drawing comparisons to Xavier Restrepo, and many believe he's going to be Restrepo 2.0. Wears the same number, very crafty, just like X. is what do you think the chances are that Miami gets Lopez on the 2026 roster?
I think it's really good. I spoke to him a little bit before the camp. Ironically, he said the one offer he hadn't gotten was Syracuse. He seems like they offer everybody in Florida, but Miami's been after him. He's probably going to take an OB there. He mentioned kind of like going down to see him practice and stuff. And they've been the most consistent with Jason. I don't know what it is. Maybe you could explain. You live in Broward. Why in the world aren't more schools going after Lopez? Like he torched guys last year at UA. And I was told about him. I'm like, this is going to be the guy that does it today. And I'm like, looking at, he was this little, he wasn't anywhere near as strong as he is now. And I'm like, okay, I'll believe it when I see it. He killed people. And then this past Sunday, it was even worse. Like his footwork, his ability to time up when he makes a change of direction is phenomenal.
Yeah,
He really does remind me of X in certain ways. He's probably stronger than X at this point of their careers, comparatively similar. But X played at Deerfield. He was a really successful high school player too. But I think Lopez technically is probably even better than what X was at this same stage. Like he was killing guys. And UA, but
yeah,
for anybody that doesn't follow, like the Under Armour camp in South Florida is DB wide receiver heaven. It's all
yeah,
the kids really come out, underclassmen included. That kids from Jacksonville come down, that kids from Orlando come down, kids from Tampa, etc. I mean, the entire state, it was loaded. One of the best UA camps I'd seen in a while. And he was one of the five or so best on either side of the ball at receiver DB. I don't you pick whoever you want, but he's one of the elite players in Florida.
yeah. I think it's just that he's a bit undersized. I think that's the only knock on him is that he's undersized, and maybe they think that he will be pushed around by bigger, stronger, more physical corners. But I quite frankly don't see many flaws in his game at all. I feel like he's a really, really crafty receiver. Last year or last season, rather, in the championship game, he played injured and still, performed well, scored a touchdown in that championship game. So, watching highlights of him now, and he just has that knack to just get open. He's not super fast. Obviously, like I said, he's not a overwhelming prospect as far as size is concerned, but he's everything that you want in a slot receiver. So I think Miami is very close in gaining a commitment from Lopez. This one, I think, is just a matter of time. Miami is I would say, the biggest school that's on his recruitment list, and he would love to stay home. He loves the staff. He loves Kevin Beard as well. That relationship continues to grow. So I really, I would be surprised if Jason Lopez ends up anywhere else besides Miami, especially since it seems Miami's looking to have an Xavier Restrepo 2.0.
Well, that would be good for Miami. You need to have a consistent slot, especially for third downs. X was one of my favorite receivers to watch the last couple of years in critical moments. He was clutch. I think Lopez kind of falls into that category as well. He was the guy that Sham and I looked for more often than not when they were playing against a quality team. It didn't matter if it's like we're watching this now, up and out route, doesn't matter. I mean, he finds a way to beat you with his feet, man.
Yeah, and
Man, anything, it doesn't matter.
yeah, and he gives you that yak too. That
Oh
those
yeah.
yards after catch, and that's something that Restrepo excelled at as well. And it seems like that's what Miami would be getting if he indeed commits to the U in these next couple of months here. I do want to go back to a player that you mentioned before, which was Javion Mallory. This is a guy that Miami's got a ton of momentum with right now. Um, all signs indicate that he's going to stay close to home to Miami. But like Brian, nothing is guaranteed in recruiting at all. But what are you hearing on Mallory, and what do you think are the chances that Miami lands the four-star running back out of West Boca?
Well, as you know, he was at UM's practice. He was a kid that has been to Miami numerous times. Power running back out of West Boca High. That he's got offers from Clemson and Florida and Notre Dame and all these places. He's supposed to go to Clemson the end of this week. We'll see. Florida and Notre Dame are possible visits, but I think he'll be committed to Miami before June. So
Yeah,
we'll see how that goes. Probably could even be this month. It wouldn't shock me. They've got the lead right now. I think, unless they get Cooper, and again, I don't think they are, he'll be the only back they take in the class. You have to take Derek Cooper no matter where he wants to play, pretty much. That's kind of how I look at him. If he wanted to play strong safety, you have to take him. So I'm curious to see how that works out if they continue to go after Cooper, how that works. But I think Mallory will be in the University of Miami recruiting class sooner rather than later.
yeah, I agree with you there. I actually did put out a future cast for Miami to land Javion Mallory. We'll see how that plays out. Another local talent that Miami has some momentum for, but this player has a lot of suitors from around the country, including Syracuse, Florida State, and others. That's Calvin Russell, another two sport player, just like Jason Lopez. This guy can play both basketball and football at an extremely high level. This is another guy we saw at the UA camp who I thought dominated and just was overpowering his adversary. So Miami has an inside, just because he's a legacy player where his mom is a legendary basketball player at UM. His uncle played football at UM, so obviously ties to the school. But this is a kid that's is definitely looking at his options. He's definitely kind of playing the field to kind of see where is the best spot for him. Syracuse is also in the mix as well for four-star wide receiver Calvin Russell out of Miami Northwestern. What are the chances of him staying home to the U?
Well, it kind of depends. Like he really likes Fran Brown in Syracuse. He mentioned Auburn, Alabama, Michigan. He's all over the place. Georgia's, Florida, Miami, Florida State. He wanted to take. He said, and I cannot see in any way, shape, or form this would ever happen, but 12 OBs. And I'm like, that's you'll be a dead man. I mean, those visits wear you out anyway.
I remember him saying that to me as well. I was
Yeah.
shocked.
But I'm like, we'll see how many he gets. And he was just honest about it. He goes, some of the schools I just don't know enough about. I like the coaches, but I've never been there. It's kind of hard if you don't take a visit, which he's correct. But at the same time, Russell is a guy that's coveted by everybody. I think it'll come down to the in-state schools, Syracuse, and maybe one other. Maybe it's Bama, maybe it's Georgia. But Syracuse is the wild card here. If you're not a basketball fan, just know that historically Syracuse they got a really good hoops program. They're probably telling him he can play both. Marcus, do you know what Miami's pitch is to anybody like this? Do they want him to consider playing basketball? Are they okay with it? Or are they not? Like, what's the deal with that?
As far as I know, they're open to it. I think you gotta kind of keep that option open just to kind of stay in the race for those schools like Syracuse who are offering both basketball and football. But I think the generally, I think they just want him to play football at wide receiver. This tape here shows him playing receiver, quarterback as well. Just an overall athlete. Like I said, I mentioned him playing basketball at a high level. But from what I know, the school and the staff just would prefer him just to kind of concentrate on football. He's open to both. It's not a deal breaker for him to play both. So I think that plays a factor as well that, he could just play football. He doesn't need to play basketball. But I think Miami is in a good spot here. To land him just because of the legacy aspect of it, the proximity aspect of it. But you kind of never know, and in this day of NIL and the transfer portal, there's just so many factors to consider with a player like Calvin Russell. So I think Miami's always going to be in this race. He did say he will not be uh, deciding until signing day.
Yep.
He did mention that. So this is going to be a long game here. for Miami. So I think they're going to continue to push. He was at Miami yesterday. From what I hear, he will be visiting Miami again at some point, maybe even this week. So Miami's definitely pushing for his commitment, but this is a kid that, like I said, won't be committing until signing day. He wants to have kind of like a huge signing day event for his commitment. So I think he's going to thoroughly look at all of his options and take visits during the season as well. And I wouldn't be surprised if another team kind of jumps in, takes the lead at some point. This one's going to be a wild roller coaster for Calvin Russell that Miami will continue to ride.
Yeah, I think it's going to be a wild ride too. Coaching changes, who plays well during the season. There'll be some things that make this fluctuate. But as you said earlier, Marcus, that's what makes recruiting fun.
Yeah, absolutely. It's fun talking to you, Brian, about recruiting. Definitely we'll bring you on again at some point because I expect some commits to happen in the next couple of weeks, and I'm sure more and more players. It is a guarantee that more and more players will be visiting Miami, so there will be more recruiting buzz in the next couple of weeks. From what I hear, there's going to be, I don't know, maybe close to maybe 100 to 200 kids that will visit Miami over the next upcoming weeks. So tune in to CanesCounty.com for more information regarding Miami Hurricanes recruiting. Thanks for joining me again, Brian.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate it.
Awesome. That's going to wrap it up for the Storm Tracker podcast. Make sure you subscribe to the website, CanesCounty.com, for free. Use the promo code Miami30 and also subscribe to the YouTube channel live from Canes County. Until the next episode.